I would like to invite our next panel, Investing in Mobility Technologies. Our moderator, Meir Arnon, founding partner at Motion Venture Partners, and he will be joined with Chris Thomas, partner from Fontinalis, Jim Adler, managing director, Toyota AI Ventures, Greg Urban, executive director at Global Industrial Group, UBS Investment Bank, and Aharon, CEO of Israel Innovation Authority.
So we are between you and lunch. So we'll try to be interesting. So we have here a banker, government. My comment about government you heard before, that's all positive. VC and VC. So I guess the first comes to mind is, and starting with Aharon because he comes from government, but he came from the private sector here in Apple in Israel. Aharon, coming from a private sector, investing money, our money, taxpayer, mobility, why mobility and not infrastructure or something?
First of all, we are investing in everything. So it's not mobility in general, but if you see what will be the trends in years to come, mobility is a very significant part of it. Now, the government, as opposed to a VC...
Hold on a second. Everybody hears well? Thank you.
So the government, as opposed to a VC, is investing in those things that are market failures. So today, we are looking for those technologies in the mobility that are market failure, and this is the reason that we are investing.
Great, Greg. Why mobility? As a banker, your UBS sees many things. You are mobility. Why did you choose this desk and not other desks?
Well, I've spent my entire career in the automotive space, whether it's as an engineer or the last sort of 10 years as an investment banker. And the first 5 or 6 years as an investment banker, doing traditional automotive, mostly helping private equity firms swap auto supplier assets between one another. The last 3 or 4 years, everything in automotive has been about tech, and that's where all the deal flow will be. I've been focused on it for 3 or 4 years, and that's connectivity, autonomy, electrification, and connectivity, and that's where all the deal flow is coming. And we've been focused on it a long time, and look forward to this next few years where we'll really start to see the first wave of deals done by sort of global bulge bracket investment banks.
And so in UBS, you see much more deals in mobility than 2 years ago.
Yes, massive deal flow at the later stage private placements of equity level, and we're starting to see the IPOs coming for the first time.
And you're at the other end of IPOs, but we'll get back to that in a minute. Jim.
Yeah, so that's much louder than my comrades here. So clearly, automotive is in disruption. And that's not lost on Toyota, of course. And in some sense, the insurgent companies into automotive are high tech. And the corollary to Mark Andreessen's software is eating the world, now cars are on the menu. And a company like Toyota must tap into that disruption. And so for me, I'm an engineer and serial entrepreneur. And so I really connect with the entrepreneurs that are disrupting the industry, and Toyota wants to tap into that industry, that innovation, and be a great partner to the innovation that's happening all over the world, but especially here in Israel. And so we're really excited to see their financial success, because it'll be our financial success. And as Arnon said, what the market chooses as successful, that's what's going to change the world. Great ideas do not. Customers do.
So just to know that Jim has this following formula. He starts a company, sell it, go to rest in a big company. Right now, you're at Toyota. Great concept. I'd like to learn from you. We'll talk about it later. Chris.
So 10 years ago, this month actually, we started the process that became Fontinalis. So when we founded the firm 9 years ago, it was very early days, and we got a lot of questions. Why in the world are you investing venture dollars in transportation? Because transportation, or mobility that's become, is long lead times, incredibly capital inefficient governmental sales. And we said that sounds bad. We don't want to invest there. We believe in incredibly capital efficient software-based technology companies that are going to revolutionize the way people, goods, and services move and are provisioned. And over the last 10 years, we've kind of taken that thesis and put it into action. So based in Detroit, one office in Boston, But what we've seen is we're stage agnostic. We're investing early and late. We're geographically agnostic. We have 2 Israeli teams, one here in Tel Aviv in cybersecurity, one focused on microclimate in Boston and Cambridge. But there's so much innovation going on when it comes to mobility holistically. Auto tech's a big part of that, and I think we're seeing a lot of auto tech here today on this panel and in the showroom. But what mobility is really that concept of a holistic movement. So the key technologies in road, rail, bike, air, autonomous land, air, and sea, full stack and component decision layers, as well as seminal, like a horizontal technology, cyber, AI, big data analytics. All of those don't necessarily strike you as being mobility. All of them are. And it's a huge opportunity when we think about that systemic opportunity across the movement of all things around the world.
So his prime investor is Bill Ford. So that's why you are in automotive, right?
So, well, I think I think Fontinalis was created because Bill is a longtime futurist in this space, someone who has always said
he has some interest in the space.
A little bit. Someone who always said that technology is going to be the solution to the variety of the problems we're facing, whether it's in core automotive or it's in the derivative opportunities of movement. But Bill, myself, and 3 other partners, we founded the firm in 2009 on the thesis that the demographic trends, the technology trends were coming together, and there was going to be a huge opportunity in this new space called next generation mobility. But I'll be honest with you, if anyone had said it would be as big as it is now, if anyone had said in 10 years you'll be sitting in Tel Aviv, in the capital of what I believe is one of the new mobility centers in the world, I wouldn't have believed you. And so it's remarkable how fast and far we've come.
But you just moved your embassy from Tel Aviv to Jerusalem.
I had nothing to do with that.
No. Aaron, tell us a bit. You wanted to have a few words about your programs and their share in our event. In fact, there are, as you know, 100 startups here presenting. 60 of them are financed by the Innovation Authority. So that means something about their interest in mobility, please.
Absolutely. So it's first of all the regular plans. 60 of the presenters are part of our investment program. And the basic way is we are looking forward towards the next stage. The next stage should be pilots. And the next stage we are going to announce together with Minister of Transportation in Israel, a pilot program next week, such that the Minister of Transportation will provide the regulations for enabling autonomous car to drive. And the other one, we are going to get the funding for those pilots. So this is the next stage. We have also innovation labs. Innovation labs are the means to take, for example, we have innovation labs with Enel, that is an energy company from Italy, and Israeli company, such that the combination of them will provide the infrastructure needed for smart cities. Another one is Renault, Nissan, and Mitsubishi that brought, 100 cars, autonomous cars, and would like the startups in Israel to install their solutions on those autonomous cars and to test them. So those are the plans that we have, and I believe that this is the good hand of the government that provides money without any regulations and taxes.
Great. So the only thing that is not under you, but still, so implementation is great as long as there is not much bureaucracy, and you'll have to move to another seat and clear bureaucracy. Israel is pretty bad about that.
Absolutely.
What is your view when you see companies, and seriously, he's primarily with UBS doing IPOs, and so tell us a little bit about what you find the thing that makes you be interested in this company or not. And then I'll share the same question with the investors here on the panel.
Sure. So I think about IPOs and private placements, but I also think about helping with M&A. And so personally, I'm interested in everything. To be a part of this ecosystem, you have to sort of understand how all parts of it are evolving because everything is changing so fast. When I covered automotive, it was sleepy companies that had revenue and had a profit margin that was high or low, and that's how you decided if a company was great or not.
That was a long time ago when they had revenue.
But helping companies in this space and helping investors in this space is a lot harder. On the investor side, I think private placements. We like to help later stage companies. There is a lot of demand from investors and ultra high net worth individuals to invest in this space because if you just look at the public markets, there's just nothing to buy. There's no public companies that are truly disruptive tech in mobility. out there today, but they're coming. And I think there's two different models on the IPO side. There's end-to-end solutions, and there's component manufacturers, and we have both here today. And they have different problems, and there's different milestones that need to be met. The end-to-end solutions tell great stories, and if you have a place in the market, you can raise a lot of money. Those IPOs are coming. The components manufacturers, I think what people are looking for are the certain milestones like getting that contract, getting that component into production, and having a pathway to big profitability. M&A side, traditional automotive suppliers want to buy components and other ecosystems within the automotive space, but it's hard because, like I said, the competitive landscape has changed. It's disruptive tech. It's not just buying revenues and EBITDA anymore. It's buying access to a system. It's buying the right to make press releases. It's setting the stage for your future. And there's a lot of investing into uncertainty, which is new for a lot of companies, and that's where I like to find clients who need my help navigating that.
Great, Greg. Jim?
Yeah. So I think you see a much broader trend than just mobility. I think you're seeing robots moving into our society, and an autonomous car is just a really big wheeled robot, and that wheeled robot is powered with artificial intelligence and data. And if you look at the difficult areas where we see a tremendous amount of innovation, if you decompose the stack to perception, prediction, and planning, we feel like planning is a tough problem, but we have a good beat on that. Perception is also, we see the light at the end of the tunnel. Prediction, however,
you have to pardon the pun there.
Huh?
That's a good pun.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, I always try to work in mobility puns when I can. But prediction is really tough because we have this theory of mind that whenever, you drive in Tel Aviv, you're projecting yourself to every other vehicle that looks like it's about to crash into you constantly, I noticed here. And also the pedestrians and the bicyclists and the scooterists. And we have to, how do you teach a machine to do that? It's incredibly difficult. And we're going to see a tremendous amount of innovation as we bring this to market. As we do, from Toyota's perspective, we are a fund related to Toyota Research, which is maximizing discovery and starting on the trek to get into the Toyota vehicles, of which we make 10 million a year. In March, we announced TRI Advanced Development in Tokyo that is really built for maturing those technologies. So we need an on-ramp into the car. And so if you look at the fund that we're doing, which maximizes discovery, and Toyota Motor Corp maximizes maturity, this $3 billion, 1,000-person effort in Tokyo is really impedance matching the discovery with the maturity. And I think as an automotive player, and one of the largest for sure, we need to figure out how to bring these amazing technologies into people's hands to make mobility safer and more affordable and open to more individuals. And we're all part of this ecosystem, as Chris said. Who'd have thunk that we'd be sitting in Tel Aviv in what is looking to be the epicenter for mobility. It's an amazing time.
And this definitely will be one of many, which is exciting as we think about evolution around the world. But I would agree with everything that was said. I think for me, and it goes back to that point around the customer, which I think is really important, what are the derivative effects of these technologies? I love the fact that I have this opportunity to invest in amazing teams and do incredibly well financially for my investors, do incredibly well for my entrepreneurs. But I love the second and third order effects of what I do every day, which is to reduce congestion. It's to improve safety. It's to give people back their most precious commodity, their time. So if I can cut half an hour out of a commute from a holistic infrastructure, mobility, technology, systemic approach, and that half an hour gives someone half an hour more with their child, half an hour more with their wife, that's real value. It's a value that it's hard to quantify. And so it seems kind of far-fetched or maybe a little bit in the ether, but it's a huge outcome that we're excited about when we think about what our companies do. What I will say, though, going back to consolidation of this industry, we are going to see a tremendous amount of consolidation, not just in terms of acquisitions by the large players, but consolidation amongst players that are currently starting up around the globe. And I have the benefit of, we have investments currently on 5 continents. We're engaging with mobility entrepreneurs who are being sought after by large auto companies, large tech companies, companies that have large insurance companies that see their model being completely changed and they want to have these team and these technologies coming in. I think we're going to see a wave of consolidation amongst different startups, which is going to be really interesting about teams and technologies coming together in the next 2 to 3 years.
Great. So I want you to continue on a different matter, which is in recent 6 months, what did you find more interesting in terms of tech, and how many technologies, or maybe you can identify 1 or 2 technologies that became more of hot spot? It used to be LiDAR, radar a year ago. What it is now?
So we take a lot of pride and we work hard to try to stay 18 to 24 months ahead of trends. Now, trends don't necessarily mean that they're the right direction to go, frankly, because there's lots of people going down rabbit holes that I would disagree with from both a technical and a demand pull perspective on the part of the OEMs or the end customer. But for us, we've made some really interesting investments in the near term. One is an Israeli team based in Cambridge, Massachusetts called Climacell. They're focused on micro weather. So you might be asking, what does weather have to do with mobility? Well, when you think about the autonomous car, or you just think about any car with ADAS, the ability to understand the weather that you're heading into from a spatial mapping perspective, how that's going to affect your drive, how that's going to affect your safety, and then going to a more macro perspective, thinking about a large pitch for a soccer match. And everyone is coming downtown, and that match is going to kick off in 20 hours. What if you can actually know exactly when that rainstorm is coming in, so as to cancel that match and save both the traffic, the congestion, and the cost that comes along with it? It has tremendous kind of second and third order effects when we think about that. Another company, also East Coast US based, is called Hugh Maddox. They're focused on micro-location. So location to the width of a micron, the width of a human hair. How can that be utilized when you think about the smart city and autonomous vehicle kind of matching and utilization? Also tremendous applications from a DoD perspective, from a smart city perspective, and the like. And so those are companies that if you'd asked me that question 18 months ago, not only would I have not invested in them, they wouldn't have been something we were focused on. But we have the benefit, having done this over the last 10 years, we take a lot of pride in working very closely with our entrepreneurs as a business development arm. So BD, sales, and marketing. I'm actually here with one of our companies, Crumba Security. People would maybe argue that cybersecurity has come and gone in Israel. I couldn't disagree more. The necessity of cyber and auto and tier 1 and mobility holistically is going to be incredibly important. And what Crumba is doing in terms of having preventative cybersecurity, not enterprise detection, but real ECU prevention. That's going to be something that's going to change how this space is thought of and the safety we can actually purvey to large fleets. These are all themes that we're really focused on right now. And I think we're excited about proliferating through the ecosystem because we understand the demand pull on the OEM side because we're talking with them as partners all the time.
Yeah. So I think we all want to be ahead of the curve. I agree. I'd love to be. Not always. What I also think is so important is that you tend to double back on areas that you thought were either very simple, straightforward, and you see innovations coming that, like planning is a great example. We're investing in a company, Real-Time Robotics, and you think planning, okay, you know where the car is going to go, just go there. It turns out robotic planning is very difficult, and you want to evaluate as many plans as you can, and we did this investment which is about 10,000 times faster than the way robotic planning is done today. So whether it's an autonomous vehicle trying to figure out which lane it's going to go into, or real-time robotic arms moving to and coordinating and staying safe within human beings, it's an amazing technology. We're invested in a company here, Intuition Robotics, which is a companion for aging adults. And what does that have to do with mobility? Well, we're realizing that the car, it already has a room in your home. It's the garage, but typically on the street in Tel Aviv.
This may change.
Yeah, this may change. But clearly, the relationship you have with your digital assistants will also translate to the relationship you have with your vehicle. And so, although Intuition Robotics is focusing on aging society and the personality of the robot and how it interacts with older adults, we know that personality will find itself in many objects within our experience, and we're really excited about that. So sometimes you get these bizarre cross currents of technology that it's not all mobility all the time. you see innovations in one space that actually project into another to create incredible unforeseen advances.
Yeah, authentication would be one that actually
Yes,
is moving in.
absolutely
Aaron?
right. Yes.
What we see is I can count those
By the way, when
companies.
he speaks, listen carefully because he can tell you which really new things coming in to his desk.
Absolutely, because we are working
Later
in a
come to your
bottom-up-
desk.
We are working in a bottom-up fashion. What we see is, first of all, a move from the traditional. We started with sensor and radars. After that, it was machine learning and deep machine learning in order to analyze what you see and what you get. And the second one is, of course, cyber. Now, what we see today is a kind of fusion between the sensors and the ability to move to the next stage. So we are, from the startup phase, we see a scale-up phase such that, and there will be a lot of consolidations, a lot of acquisitions, a lot of companies that will go out of business. And this is the stage in which we have to scale up. Now, when we are going to see really, a case car, connected, autonomous, shared, and then electrical, in the street, it's a question. There are people that are saying 2021, there are people that are saying 2030. Between those two dates, it will happen. Now, the case is when the regulation will allow it and when the infrastructure will allow it, then it is going to happen. And there are a lot of challenges on those two scenarios that are not related to the car. They're related to the smart cities, are related to the infrastructure. So this is something that we have to invest and to pay attention to, because this is going to be the next stage.
I echo everything that everyone has said on the panel here. And again, I'm looking at this through the perspective of...
It's kind of a later stage.
Yes, investors and clients who are looking to make acquisitions. My client base is really focused on the size of the market, certainty of being able to achieve that market potential, and the risks involved with making those investments. And I think for a lot of those reasons, I think LiDAR is still LiDAR, radar, sensors is still a really hot area because the market potential is so huge and almost everyone's certain that cars will need these sensors. But outside of that, thinking about electrification, mobility, connectivity, ride on demand, I think what differentiates business models in the eyes of investors is something with a track record of actually working well and working better than what's out there today. We've all experienced a lot of new, latest and greatest things around mobility, and they're supposed to be the way you're going to move in the rest of the future for the rest of your life. But when you actually try and use it, it's hard to find the driver, or it takes you 15 minutes. It's not as smooth as it should be. So working out those kinks are things that I think investors are focused on now.
Great. In a minute, I'll open for questions, so prepare yours. Israelis versus, say, Americans, Europeans, when they show in. So 10 years ago, when I started my first company, it was 82. We later sold it to BMC Software in 99. And we didn't know English. We were schlep, always late, had no idea. What it is today for Israeli? To my experience, the exact opposite. We are on time, Americans are not. So something happened. So can you comment on? Exception.
I don't dress well, but I find myself...
Dress well.
I think we always model ourselves on what we hope to be, and so we've now modeled ourselves on the Israelis, and the Israelis have modeled themselves on the Americans.
But I'll tell you something. Usually the joke was this. So the first day tourists come to Israel, they were well, and we schlep. So we sit and say, next day I dress well. But he learned the trick, so he dressed like us. So now, more or less, except for me, everybody dressed the same.
So I would say two things. First and foremost, I was actually just having this conversation yesterday, and the question that I received was, what do you love about Israel? What do you love about the Israeli entrepreneur? And I said, I love three things. I love the drive, I love the work ethic, and I love that you're on a war footing. And they're like, what do you mean you're on a war footing? So I'm prior service U.S. Army. And what I love about this culture And what I love about it across the board, but especially within the entrepreneurs that I have the pleasure of working with, is they are always on the go. They're always looking ahead. They're always focused on taking the next hill. That is something that I want to wake up every day, and I want to work with those men and women. And so you curate those people in your life and anywhere you are in the world, but I would offer just the per capita likelihood of meeting an Israeli entrepreneur that has those characteristics incredibly high, and I love that. And the other thing I would offer is that what I really like about the entrepreneurs here and this ecosystem in general, there are going to be multiple global headquarters and capitals of mobility. We know, I'm from the Motor City. I'm a good son of Detroit. I love Detroit. I love Michigan. But Tel Aviv will be a capital of mobility. Detroit will be a capital of mobility. So will Stuttgart. So will Tokyo in some way or in some form. So will Silicon Valley, certainly. But when I look at Detroit in particular, the largest transportation technology cluster in the world, when it comes to OEM Tier 1 and technology focused uniquely on the movement of goods, people, and services, large land auto focus certainly. But there's bridges being built right now between the state of Michigan and the country of Israel, Tel Aviv and Detroit. And those are going to result in tremendous outcomes that I'm really excited about.
Thanks, Jim. I will not ask Aaron about that. Yeah.
I would echo some of that. I think every locale brings its strengths. I think most entrepreneurial hubs are grounded in the military. Silicon Valley came out of the military in the Cold War. And great universities, and I think Tel Aviv, Israel, is following in that regard. We are also investors in Slamcore in London. London is bringing something in UK, something different as well. Amazing depth of academic rigor with a very stiff upper lip kind of UK approach. And China, of course, cannot be ignored. So this is sort of a global opportunity and struggle to develop the best technologies, the best teams. I would echo what Chris said. It's so heartening as someone who's worked, 120, 30-hour weeks most of my career. It's just heartening to see these folks wake up every day just grinding it out. And they're just completely fearless. Why? Because, hey, in a startup, no one's shooting at you. And it's incredibly satisfying to invest in a team that's working so hard to really fundamentally change our society.
Great. Greg? Quick,
again, I echo what Jim and Chris said. A lot of respect for the culture and the mentality here. Love the fearlessness. And the startup community is unique from what I see in North America in a couple of ways. One is, I think a lot of founders in North America have paralysis, thinking they need to invent the next Google or Facebook or Uber. And here, echoing what I said before, a little bit more, practical implications, things that have a market in the next few years. And the other thing that's unique about the Israeli startup community, I think, is the focus on hardware and security. Those are two gaps where a lot of startups in North America and other places don't really address.
Great, thanks. Questions from the audience? I have many other questions, but you don't want to hear them. Yeah, go ahead.
I'm an investor from the Netherlands, and we have a few big pension funds, and I'm always surprised by the very fact that the investments either from the VCs, from the private side, or from the government side. I hardly don't see any pension fund investing in this new technology.
Israeli pension funds do not invest in Israeli technologies. That's the point?
Any pension fund.
Yeah, but who would answer that from this panel? That's a fair statement. Another question? Please.
To open up a bit the matter we're talking about autonomous cars, but how about autonomous flying cars? This is mainly a question for Jim and Chris.
Yeah.
Great, so let me rephrase that. In a year from now, you were talking about 2 years ago, year 2 from now, will we see flying cars coming to your desks, and at what stage will that be?
Yeah, so let me kick that off. So we
have 2 minutes before they shoot us.
So we made an investment in a flying air taxi, Joby Aviation, which is electric vertical takeoff and landing. It's an amazing vehicle, completely quiet, and it's looking to deliver a ride-hail service at the same cost as an Uber or Lyft, about $1.50 per passenger mile. As I mentioned, Slamcore is doing something for flying vehicles where if you lose your GPS, what do? And so be able to figure out where you are without the aid of GPS is an amazing and enabling technology that vehicles, whether they be drones that don't carry humans or flying vehicles that do, are going to need that kind of technology.
Chris?
And I would just quickly say, I have a 2.5-year-old boy. He's going to have a license because he's a good boy and he's from Detroit. My granddaughter won't. And it won't be because she's not traveling around the world, it's because she won't need one. So VTOL as a component part of systemic mobility, where I actually take a cab or I walk the beach to a VTOL, a vertical takeoff and landing kind of hangar. I fly here, I take a bike share somewhere else. That's going to be that integrated mobility, and aerial assets are going to be a big part of it.
Great. So I have to stop here to be punctual. So thank you very much, Chris, Jim, Aaron, Greg. Have a wonderful day, you all.